Close your eyes. February 24th, 2022. Russian troops crossed the border into Ukraine. Within days, the United States, the European Union, and their allies announced the most sweeping financial sanctions ever imposed on a major economy. Russia is cut off from SWIFT, the global messaging system that banks use to move money across borders. The ruble collapses 30% in a single day. And in the offices of Russia's central bank, policymakers face a question they had spent years debating but never resolved. What do you do with Bitcoin now? For almost a decade, Russian officials had been at war with themselves over cryptocurrency. The central bank wanted a complete ban. The finance ministry wanted to tax it. The FSB worried it was a tool for Western influence. Parliament debated the question year after year without resolution. Meanwhile, ordinary Russians were buying Bitcoin quietly. Oligarchs were moving wealth into crypto to protect it from political risk. And miners had set up operations in Siberia, where the electricity was cheap and the cold air worked as free cooling. Then the sanctions came, and suddenly the conversation changed completely. If Russia could not use the dollar, could not use the euro, could not use SWIFT, could it use Bitcoin? Could a nation that had spent years fighting cryptocurrency now use it to survive? This is the story of Russia and crypto. A decade of contradiction, followed by a moment of reckoning. Ready for Chapter 1? The story begins in a time of profound change and uncertainty. It's the early 1990s in Russia, a nation emerging from the shadows of the Soviet Union. The rigid grip of a centralized economy is loosening, giving way to the chaotic promise of a free market. With the fall of the Iron Curtain, the Russian people are thrust into a new world defined by capitalism and opportunity. Yet, with this newfound freedom comes fear and instability. The state, once an omnipotent force, now struggles to find its footing. The ruble, once a symbol of Soviet power, plummets in value. Inflation spirals out of control, leaving millions in financial disarray. By 1992, prices have increased by over 2,000%, and the people feel the pinch. It's a world where yesterday's savings mean little today, and where financial security is a distant memory. As the government grapples with economic reform, the Russian psyche is shaped by a deep skepticism towards financial freedom. Trust in institutions erodes, replaced by a wariness of the market's volatility. This skepticism becomes a defining feature of Russia's relationship with emerging financial technologies. Fast forward to January 2014. Bitcoin, a nascent technology at the time, offers a new form of financial autonomy. It represents a decentralized currency, free from government control. Yet for Russia, it is a double-edged sword. The Prosecutor General's office issues a stark warning. The use of Bitcoin is potentially illegal. The ruble is the sole legal means of payment, and Bitcoin threatens this status quo. This initial stance reflects a deeply ingrained distrust. Bitcoin is seen not as a tool of empowerment, but as a potential destabilizer. The Financial Services Authority and other regulatory bodies quickly express concerns. The fears are not unfounded. Bitcoin's anonymity offers a haven for illicit transactions. In Russia, where financial crimes are not uncommon, this raises alarms. By April 2014, the Central Bank of Russia, led by Elvira Nabiullina, reinforces this cautious approach. Elvira, known for her conservative stance on financial innovation, openly criticizes Bitcoin. She warns of risks associated with its volatility and potential for misuse. Her voice joins a chorus of skepticism, echoing throughout the corridors of power in Moscow. Meanwhile, the finance ministry sees an opportunity. They argue for regulation rather than prohibition. Their perspective is pragmatic: harness Bitcoin's potential for taxation and revenue. This debate within Russia's financial authorities intensifies, setting the stage for a long-term policy stalemate. In the backdrop of these policy debates, the global stage is shifting. Russia faces increasing economic isolation due to geopolitical tensions. Sanctions from Western nations begin to bite, isolating Russia from traditional financial systems. This isolation forces a reevaluation of Bitcoin, transforming it from a threat to a potential asset. Yet, the early years of Bitcoin's introduction are marked by fear and uncertainty. In 2016, a draft law proposes criminalizing Bitcoin use with penalties of up to 4 years in prison. The Russian state wavers between aggressive crackdowns and tepid acceptance. This oscillation reflects the broader struggle within Russia to balance control with the winds of change blowing across the globe. In cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, the tech-savvy youth are captivated by Bitcoin's promise. They see it as a ticket to financial independence, a way to bypass the constraints of Russia's struggling economy. Yet, they tread carefully, aware of the state's watchful eye. As Bitcoin's popularity grows, so too does the state's crackdown on its use. By 2017, the landscape begins to shift subtly. Bitcoin mining operations start popping up in Siberia, taking advantage of the natural cold for cooling and the region's abundant hydroelectric power. This practical adaptation hints at a changing perspective, one that sees Bitcoin not just as a threat, but as a tool. The global community watches closely. Russia's ballet of financial policy is not just about Bitcoin, but about its place in a rapidly digitizing world economy. The central bank remains wary, viewing Bitcoin as a Western invention, a potential Trojan horse within Russia's economic fortress. Meanwhile, proponents argue that ignoring Bitcoin could mean falling behind in the global financial race. In the cities, in the vast expanses of Siberia, and in the offices of Moscow, the debate rages. Bitcoin becomes more than just a currency. It is a symbol of a deeper struggle. It represents the tension between old and new, between control and freedom, between isolation and integration. As the chapter closes, we find a nation at a crossroads. Russia's journey with Bitcoin is just beginning, fraught with challenges and possibilities. How will a state, so accustomed to control, adapt to a world driven by decentralized technologies? Will Bitcoin become a cornerstone of Russian finance, or remain an outsider in the shadows? As we move deeper into this narrative, the question remains, can the bear learn to embrace the future? Join us in the next chapter as we explore the debate that never ended, where internal conflicts and contrasting visions shape the path forward. Join us in the next chapter as we explore the debate that never ended, where internal conflicts and contrasting visions shape the path forward. In the quiet but frenetic halls of power in Moscow, the year 2014 marked the beginning of a prolonged contentious debate. At the center of this debate were two powerful entities, the Central Bank of Russia and the Ministry of Finance. These bodies found themselves on opposing ends of a new and unexpected financial frontier, Bitcoin. Elvira Nabiullina, the respected governor of the central bank since 2013, stood firm in her view. She perceived Bitcoin as a potentially destabilizing force, threatening the financial stability that Russia sought so dearly to maintain. In public statements, she often cited concerns over the currency's volatility and its potential use for illicit activities. For Nabiullina, Bitcoin represented a tool that could undermine Russia's financial sovereignty. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Finance, led by Anton Siluanov, took a more pragmatic view. Siluanov recognized the disruptive potential of cryptocurrencies, but saw them as an opportunity for innovation and financial growth. By 2016, the ministry began drafting proposals not to ban, but to regulate and tax the burgeoning cryptocurrency market. It was a bold attempt to harness the power of Bitcoin while maintaining control over its impact. This internal conflict was further fueled by the Prosecutor General's office, which, in January 2014, declared that the use of Bitcoin was potentially illegal by Russian law. The ruble was, and still is, the sole legal means of payment in Russia. This pronouncement further polarized opinions, setting the stage for a prolonged policy stalemate. It was a debate with no clear resolution on the horizon. At the time, global attention was fixated on Russia, not for its nascent cryptocurrency debate, but because of its geopolitical maneuvers. In March 2014, Russia's annexation of Crimea led to a series of sanctions imposed by Western nations. These sanctions intensified Russia's economic isolation and cast a long shadow over its financial policies. The sanctions resulted in a significant impact on the Russian economy, highlighting vulnerabilities that had long been ignored. The ruble faced devaluation pressures, and inflation rates soared, creating an economic environment ripe for alternative financial solutions. As global financial institutions distanced themselves from Russia, the debate over Bitcoin's role in the economy took on new urgency. The central bank, wary of the economic instability, doubled down on its efforts to control financial transactions. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Finance viewed the sanctions as a window of opportunity to explore new economic models, including the potential role of cryptocurrencies. It was within this tense economic backdrop that the debate became not just about Bitcoin, but about the future of Russia's financial landscape. In 2016, the debate over Bitcoin took a dramatic turn with the introduction of a draft law. This law proposed criminalizing the use of Bitcoin, carrying penalties of up to 4 years in prison for those caught using or facilitating cryptocurrency transactions. This harsh stance reflected the central bank's influence and its unyielding position on maintaining monetary control. Yet, the Ministry of Finance continued to argue for a framework that would regulate rather than eliminate the cryptocurrency market. As these legislative battles unfolded, ordinary Russians began to engage more actively with cryptocurrencies. In urban centers like Moscow and St. Petersburg, tech-savvy citizens saw Bitcoin as an alternative means of preserving wealth in the face of economic uncertainty. The underground market for Bitcoin started to flourish, driven by both curiosity and necessity. It was a grassroots response to the broader economic challenges facing the nation. Throughout this period, the Federal Security Service, FSB, maintained a watchful eye on the situation. They viewed Bitcoin with suspicion, seeing it as a potential tool of Western influence. The FSB's concerns added another layer of complexity to an already multifaceted debate. Here was a financial tool that could empower individuals but also challenge state control, a duality that kept policymakers on edge. Despite the conflict and uncertainty, Bitcoin's presence in Russia continued to grow subtly yet persistently. By 2017, Russia was home to a burgeoning community of cryptocurrency enthusiasts and miners. Siberia, with its vast expanse and frigid climate, emerged as an unexpected hub for Bitcoin mining. The natural cold was utilized ingeniously to cool the powerful computers required for mining operations. It was an adaptation that spoke to Russia's resilience and resourcefulness in the face of adversity. As the debate persisted, the global economic landscape continued to shift. Cryptocurrencies began gaining legitimacy worldwide, with nations like Japan and the United States starting to accept them as valid financial instruments. This international acceptance added pressure on Russian policymakers to resolve their internal disagreements. A failure to do so could leave Russia trailing behind in the digital currency revolution. By 2020, the debate had come full circle, with both sides realizing the necessity of a compromise. The economic and technological realities could no longer be ignored. Russia's relationship with Bitcoin had evolved from one of suspicion and conflict to a nuanced understanding that perhaps this digital asset had a place in its financial ecosystem. But the path to this realization was fraught with tension and contradiction, setting the stage for what lay ahead. As we look to the next chapter, a new reality, we will uncover how the tides of international sanctions and internal pressures finally led to a transformational shift in Russia's approach to cryptocurrency. The debate may have never ended, but the rise of Bitcoin in Russia reflects a nation grappling with change on an unprecedented scale. By 2022, the world looked very different for Russia. Sanctions, layered and intricate, had woven a tight web around the nation's financial arteries. This was a new reality, one that demanded inventive solutions and a recalibration of previously held beliefs. As Western nations imposed these measures, intending to bend Moscow's will, Russia found itself turning to unconventional methods to keep the economic gears turning. Enter Bitcoin. The very digital currency that once drew skepticism from Russian officials now seemed to offer a lifeline. In the Russian state's earlier encounters with Bitcoin, the currency had been dismissed as a tool potentially capable of destabilizing the national economy. Back in January 2014, the Prosecutor General's office had explicitly warned that the use of Bitcoin might be illegal. The Russian ruble, the sole legal tender, was fiercely protected. Yet by necessity, perspectives shifted. The pivot was neither immediate nor straightforward. Within the corridors of power, a silent acknowledgement emerged. Bitcoin could serve as a shield against the economic maelstrom triggered by sanctions. This transformation was not merely a fiscal adaptation, but a profound ideological shift. In this period, Anatoly Aksakov, a prominent figure in the Russian financial legislature, became an unlikely advocate for the cryptocurrency. He argued for Bitcoin's potential to bypass global financial systems that had become increasingly hostile to Russian interests. His suggestions were met with mixed responses, yet the urgency of the situation made them difficult to disregard. Across the nation, businesses faced mounting pressures. Traditional payment gateways were closing. International markets, once seamless, now felt like locked fortresses. For companies like Gazprom, which relied heavily on foreign exchange transactions, Bitcoin offered a novel alternative. Its decentralized nature bypassed the need for conventional banking pathways. But adaptation did not end at corporate doors. For ordinary citizens, the necessity to switch to Bitcoin became a matter of financial survival. Individuals who had never considered cryptocurrencies began educating themselves in digital wallets and blockchain technology. The transition was both bewildering and empowering. In cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, meetups and seminars sprouted up. Tech enthusiasts and financial novices crowded into conference rooms, eager to understand how Bitcoin could be harnessed. These gatherings, once niche, grew into vibrant hubs of innovation and hope. Not everyone embraced this digital shift with open arms. Elvira Nabiullina, the formidable governor of the central bank, remained a vocal critic of cryptocurrencies. Her concerns were not unfounded. She warned that an unregulated Bitcoin market could further jeopardize the already fragile Russian economy. Nabiullina's cautionary approach underscored a fundamental tension. The desire for economic autonomy clashed with the risks of uncharted financial territories. Yet, as the sanctions bite deepened, the balance tipped increasingly towards innovation over caution. The finance ministry, led by Anton Siluanov, took a more pragmatic stance. They argued for a regulatory framework that could integrate Bitcoin into the broader economy without losing control. Siluanov envisioned a system where cryptocurrencies were taxed and monitored, ensuring state benefits without the chaos of complete deregulation. This evolving Bitcoin landscape within Russia was not just a response to sanctions, but a shift in global economic dynamics. As countries like China and the United States asserted their own cryptocurrency policies, Russia's maneuvering became a subject of global interest. Analysts worldwide speculated on the long-term implications of Russia's embrace of Bitcoin. Interestingly, the transition was also geographical. The vast, frozen landscapes of Siberia became central to this new economic strategy. Known for its extreme cold, Siberia provided an unexpected advantage: natural cooling for Bitcoin mining operations. This not only reduced costs, but also allowed for the expansion of mining activities, crucial for maintaining a steady flow of Bitcoin. Siberian hydroelectric dams powered these operations, adding a layer of sustainability to the enterprise. Companies like Bit River and EN Plus Group capitalized on this synergy, transforming remote regions into vital hubs of digital currency production. This practical ingenuity highlighted Russia's capacity for adaptation in the face of adversity. Despite the opportunities, the challenges were manifold. Integrating Bitcoin into the mainstream economy required a careful balancing act. The legal framework, still nascent, needed to evolve rapidly to address issues of security and fraud. This period marked an unprecedented chapter of legislative activity, as lawmakers grappled with the complexities of the digital currency. Throughout this transformative journey, a fundamental question persisted. Could Bitcoin truly offer a sustainable alternative, or was it merely a temporary fix in uncertain times? This question loomed large over the Russian economic landscape, driving further investigation and debate. As the world watched, Russia's relationship with Bitcoin unfolded like a modern fable of necessity and resilience. The once maligned currency was becoming a cornerstone in the nation's new financial architecture. Yet, as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. In the crucible of international isolation, Russia was forging a path that might redefine its economic future. Still, as digital coins flowed into the Russian economy, more questions arose about the ethical and geopolitical ramifications. With each Bitcoin transaction, Russia edged further into a new era. As we turn to the next chapter, we delve into the chilling practicality of Siberia's winters and how they offered a surprising solution for the burgeoning Bitcoin industry. The biting cold of Siberia, often feared and revered, became a surprising ally in an unexpected economic shift for Russia. The vast frozen landscape extending over 13 million square kilometers provides a natural cooling system that miners of Bitcoin have come to treasure. As global sanctions began to tighten their hold on Russia's economy, this remote region emerged as an unlikely haven for cryptocurrency operations. In the small town of Norilsk, 300 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, the confluence of sub-zero temperatures and abundant energy resources created a unique opportunity. The seemingly endless supply of hydroelectric power from the Yenisei River, coupled with the natural chill, offered the perfect environment for Bitcoin mining. Miners, like Anatoly Ivanov, found a new frontier in these icy expanse. The cold, Ivanov noted with a wry smile, is not just a challenge, it's our greatest advantage. By 2021, the Bitcoin operations in Siberia had grown exponentially, paralleling the increasing economic strain from international sanctions. As nations around the world responded to geopolitical tensions by restricting Russia's access to global financial markets, the Kremlin faced a harsh reality. Traditional revenue streams were faltering, and there was an urgent need to find alternatives to navigate this economic blockade. Cryptocurrency, once viewed with suspicion, began to be considered not merely a financial instrument, but a potential solution to an existential problem. The pivot to Bitcoin mining in Siberia was not only a practical decision, but also a strategic maneuver. As Anatoly Ivanov watched his small operation grow, he realized that this was more than just a business venture. It was a lifeline. The relationship between Russia and Bitcoin was initially fraught with distrust. Back in January 2014, the Prosecutor General's office had declared that the use of Bitcoin was potentially illegal. This announcement underscored the entrenched wariness of financial innovations that could threaten the dominance of the ruble, Russia's sole legal tender. Yet, as the pressures of international isolation mounted, the narrative began to shift. The Finance Ministry's advocacy for regulation and taxation of cryptocurrencies slowly gained traction, despite consistent opposition from figures like Central Bank Governor Elvira Nabiullina. The internal debate that had simmered within Russia's financial circles for years, as chronicled in previous chapters, was reaching a critical juncture. Russian innovators, like Ivanov, embraced this new financial landscape with a mixture of cautious optimism and shrewd pragmatism. The practical use of Siberia's climate for mining operations was not merely about economics. It was a testament to resilience and adaptation in the face of global adversity. The miners' ability to leverage the natural environment for economic gain symbolized a broader theme of transformation under duress. In cities like Irkutsk and Bratsk, where industrial legacies once thrived, old factories were repurposed into mining hubs. The hum of thousands of machines replaced the silence left by factories that had closed in the post-Soviet era. The juxtaposition of past industrial might with cutting-edge digital currency struck a poignant note of revival and reinvention. The Russian government, while still wary, could not ignore the economic potential that Bitcoin mining represented. The revenues from these operations became a small yet significant stream of hard currency. Moreover, the decentralized nature of Bitcoin transactions allowed some transactions to skirt the sanctions that had been imposed by Western powers. Officials in Moscow began to consider how these operations could be integrated into the broader economic strategy. They were forced to reconcile their reluctance with the evident benefits. The shift was not without its critics, both domestically and internationally. However, for those in the thick of the Siberian mining boom, the debate was overshadowed by the tangible economic benefits. As Anatoly Ivanov expanded his mining facilities, he reflected on how much had changed. A decade ago, he had not even heard of Bitcoin. Now it was at the heart of his livelihood. "We are not just mining Bitcoin," Ivanov observed. "We are mining our future." His words captured a sentiment that resonated far beyond the cold plains of Siberia. In the broader context, Siberia's Bitcoin mining operations represented a microcosm of Russia's adaptation to new economic realities. The story here was not just about technology or finance, but about resilience in the face of adversity. As the global financial wall grew taller, this cold solution offered a narrow path through. The practical challenges of Siberian Bitcoin mining were significant. Extreme temperatures, logistical hurdles, and the need for constant innovation pushed miners to their limits. Despite these challenges, the industry continued to attract interest and investment, serving as a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of opportunity in unlikely places. In this crucible of cold and necessity, Russia found a way to turn apparent disadvantages into assets. The natural cooling provided an efficiency that was unmatched, allowing operations to be both cost-effective and environmentally conscious, given the renewable energy sources powering the mines. As this chapter of Russia's journey with Bitcoin unfolds, the implications stretch far beyond the economic sphere. They touch on the political, the social, and the existential. How a nation adapts to global shifts speaks volumes about its character and its future. In the next chapter, we will explore how the global financial wall that necessitated this shift continues to shape the Russian economy. We will delve into the impact of international sanctions and how cryptocurrencies might be reshaping not just Russia, but the very fabric of global finance. The story of Bitcoin in Russia is one of turning points where adversity becomes a catalyst for change. And as we look ahead, the future remains unwritten, but it carries the promise of possibility. And as we look ahead, the future remains unwritten, but it carries the promise of possibility. Russia's journey with Bitcoin has been as tumultuous as it is transformative. The global financial wall that sanctions erected has forced the nation to rethink its economic strategies, leading to an unexpected embrace of digital currencies. In this chapter, we delve into the intricate dance between international pressures and the emerging role of Bitcoin within Russia's economy. The year was 2014. The Prosecutor General's office in Russia issued a stern warning. Bitcoin, a digital currency barely known to the general public at the time, was deemed potentially illegal. The ruble, they emphasized, was the only legal means of payment in Russia. This declaration reflected a deep-seated suspicion of financial systems not under state control. It was a sentiment rooted in historical distrust, nurtured through decades of centralized economic policies. This skepticism wasn't without reason. Russia had witnessed the chaotic transition from a tightly controlled Soviet economy to a market-driven one, marked by exploitation and financial crises. The scars of the 1998 financial collapse, where hyperinflation wiped out savings overnight, lingered in the collective memory. Such experiences made the Russian state wary of any currency or system that could evade its regulatory grasp. As global sanctions intensified in the years that followed, Russia found itself increasingly isolated. Foreign investments dwindled, and trade barriers rose like iron curtains. The nation needed a financial pivot. It was during this backdrop of economic constriction that Bitcoin emerged not as a threat, but a potential lifeline. Hydroelectric dams in Siberia, initially intended to power industrial ambitions, found a new purpose. They began to fuel large-scale Bitcoin mining operations. The cold Siberian climate, once a harsh adversary, now became an ally in cooling the heat-intensive mining processes. These operations turned into a crucial economic activity, reducing costs and increasing efficiency in mining Bitcoin. Yet, the path to embracing Bitcoin was far from straightforward. Within the government, a fierce debate ensued. Elvira Nabiullina, the governor of the central bank, remained a vocal critic. She viewed Bitcoin as a destabilizing tool, potentially controlled by foreign adversaries. In her eyes, it was a currency without a country, a concept that threatened national sovereignty. On the other hand, the finance ministry saw opportunity. They advocated for regulation and taxation, proposing that embracing and structuring Bitcoin could mitigate its risks while offering economic benefits. This internal conflict culminated in a prolonged policy stalemate, leaving the nation in a state of regulatory limbo. Despite these challenges, the practical utility of Bitcoin in bypassing sanctions couldn't be ignored. As international banks cut ties and access to global financial systems dwindled, businesses and individuals turned to cryptocurrencies as alternate conduits for trade and transactions. By 2021, the necessity to adapt became undeniable. The shift was not just governmental but cultural, as Russian citizens began to see Bitcoin as both a tool of resistance and survival. This evolution wasn't confined to the white halls of government. On the streets of Moscow and the vast expanses of the Russian countryside, an underground market for Bitcoin flourished. It was a market driven not only by opportunists and criminals, but by ordinary citizens looking for financial stability amidst uncertainty. Here, Bitcoin was less about ideology and more about practicality, a digital wallet as a shield against volatility. The global financial wall forced many such cracks through which Bitcoin seeped into everyday life. In the city of Irkutsk, for instance, where energy is cheap, Bitcoin miners proliferated, creating a new class of digital entrepreneurs. These miners, often young and tech-savvy, viewed their work not just as a business but as a form of defiance against both economic hardship and technological lag. With this shift, a complex legal labyrinth formed around the use and regulation of Bitcoin in Russia. Contradictory laws emerged, each reflecting the tug-of-war between control and freedom. In 2016, a draft law proposed harsh penalties, including up to 4 years in prison for Bitcoin use. Yet by 2020, discussions of integrating cryptocurrencies into the national financial system began to gain traction. As the nation grappled with these challenges, the dialogue surrounding Bitcoin became emblematic of a broader struggle. It was a struggle of identity, between embracing innovation and retaining control. The stakes were high, not only for Russia, but for the global cryptocurrency movement. The outcome of Russia's experiment with Bitcoin would reverberate far beyond its borders, influencing policies and perceptions worldwide. The story of Russia and Bitcoin is a rich tapestry woven from threads of necessity, resilience, and adaptation. Each step, each decision has been shaped by a complex interplay of historical context and present pressures. As we stand at the precipice of change, the lessons gleaned from Russia's journey offer a glimpse into the future of global finance, a future that remains as unpredictable as it is promising. In this evolving narrative, Bitcoin's role is both catalyst and consequence, reshaping not just economies, but ideologies. What began as a crack in the wall of sanctions has widened into a corridor of possibilities, challenging traditional notions of currency and power. As we turn the page to our next chapter, we explore the legal labyrinth further, a journey through the tangled web of regulations and reforms. Here, within the corridors of power and the streets of the underground market, the future of Bitcoin in Russia continues to unfold, etched into the annals of history with every transaction. Here, within the corridors of power and the streets of the underground market, the future of Bitcoin in Russia continues to unfold, etched into the annals of history with every transaction. In the intricate dance of power and technology, 2016 marked a pivotal year. Russia's draft law threatened to criminalize Bitcoin use with up to 4 years in prison, a chilling reminder of the state's intent to control. Yet this proposed legislation revealed more than just fear of the unknown. It underscored a deeper tension within the Russian government's approach to financial autonomy. In January 2014, the Prosecutor General's office sent shockwaves through the burgeoning cryptocurrency community by asserting that Bitcoin use was potentially illegal. This stark warning served as a testament to the enduring skepticism harbored by Russian authorities. The ruble, they reiterated, was the sole legal means of payment within the nation. However, the proposed draconian measures in 2016 did little to quell the growing curiosity and demand for Bitcoin. The finance ministry saw potential where others saw peril. Advocating for a regulatory framework, it envisioned taxation as a pragmatic bridge between outright prohibition and unchecked freedom. The divide between the ministry and the central bank, led by Elvira Nabiullina, grew increasingly pronounced. Nabiullina, a constant voice against Bitcoin, viewed it as a destabilizing force, one that threatened the fragile economic order she sought to protect. As internal debates raged, the external landscape shifted dramatically. Global sanctions, a response to geopolitical maneuvers, tightened their grip on the Russian economy. The predictable flow of international funds slowed to a trickle, forcing the nation to explore new avenues. Bitcoin, once dismissed as a fringe financial instrument, began to emerge as a viable alternative. In the remote expanses of Siberia, Bitcoin mining operations flourished, leveraging the harsh natural climate to reduce cooling costs. Hydroelectric dams in this vast region powered these operations, showcasing a marriage of natural resource and technological innovation. The cold, once seen as an impediment, now became an asset, a lifeline in Russia's changing economic reality. But beneath the surface of this newfound embrace lay a complex legal labyrinth. Contradictory laws and uneven enforcement sowed confusion. For every step toward regulation, there seemed to be a corresponding step back into uncertainty. The FSB, Russia's security service, viewed Bitcoin with suspicion, fearing it as a potential tool of Western influence. Reports circulated of clandestine operations aimed at monitoring Bitcoin transactions, attempts to exert control in an uncontrollable digital space. Yet as the state grappled with regulation, an underground market quietly thrived. Ordinary citizens faced with economic hardship sought refuge in Bitcoin's promise of financial independence. For some, it was a means of making ends meet. For others, an opportunity to circumvent restrictions. The black market for Bitcoin became an intricate web of human resilience and ingenuity. Here, stories emerged of individuals like Igor, a software engineer who turned to Bitcoin to support his family amidst rising inflation. In the shadows, Igor negotiated the complexities of digital wallets and exchanges, a modern-day rebel navigating a digital frontier. As legal frameworks lagged, criminals too found solace in the anonymity Bitcoin offered. From drug trafficking to money laundering, Bitcoin became entwined with illicit activities, challenging authorities and complicating the narrative of cryptocurrency's role. Despite these challenges, the momentum behind Bitcoin continued to build, driven by necessity and innovation. Entrepreneurs sought opportunities within the gaps of regulation, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Each transaction, legal or otherwise, painted a new stroke in the evolving portrait of Russia's economic landscape. The state, confronted with this duality, faced a critical juncture. Would it persist in its pursuit of control, or adapt to the changing tides of global finance? The answer seemed elusive, a dance between past convictions and future possibilities. In Moscow, policymakers debated the future, while in the icy Siberian expanses, miners worked tirelessly, their efforts a testament to the convergence of old-world resources and new-world technology. Bitcoin mining, once a niche activity, became emblematic of Russia's complex relationship with cryptocurrency. As 2021 approached, the stakes intensified. Global sanctions showed no sign of abating, and the need for financial innovation grew ever more pressing. Bitcoin, in all its volatile glory, offered a pathway, albeit fraught with risk and uncertainty. The Russian government, faced with economic isolation, could no longer afford to ignore the digital currency revolution. Yet, the path to acceptance was neither clear nor straightforward. In a landscape shaped by historical skepticism and contemporary challenges, the journey was bound to be tumultuous. The landscape of Russian Bitcoin usage, marked by contradictions and complexity, continued to evolve. The question remained, how would this intricate relationship unfold in the years to come? Amidst this uncertainty, the broader implications for global cryptocurrency adoption came to the fore. As Russia navigated its legal labyrinth, other nations watched closely, keenly aware that the future of finance was being written in real time. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and opportunities alike. In the end, the story of Bitcoin in Russia was not just about currency, but about power, control, and the relentless march of technological progress. As the corridors of power grappled with these realities, the underground market thrived, a testament to human ingenuity and persistence. With each passing day, the narrative continued to unfold, carving its place in the annals of history. And so, as we leave this chapter, we turn our gaze to the horizon, where the future of Bitcoin in Russia lies unwritten, waiting to be discovered. Perhaps in the next chapter, the answers will begin to reveal themselves, as the world watches, poised for the next turn in this unfolding saga. Perhaps in the next chapter, the answers will begin to reveal themselves as the world watches, poised for the next turn in this unfolding saga. But for now, we must delve into the aftermath of Russia's clandestine embrace of Bitcoin. It's a story not only of economic strategies, but also of human experiences, weaving through the lives of ordinary citizens and shadowy operatives alike. As we venture into the depths of this underground world, we encounter figures like Sergei Kazakov, a tech-savvy entrepreneur from St. Petersburg. In early 2022, Kazakov found himself navigating the intricate web of the black market, where Bitcoin became his lifeline. With the ruble's value plummeting due to international sanctions, Sergei turned to cryptocurrency to preserve his savings, reflecting a deeper narrative of necessity and survival. The black market for Bitcoin in Russia burgeoned beneath the surface, unnoticed by many, but essential to those who engaged with it. In cities like Moscow and Novosibirsk, anonymous online forums buzzed with activity as users traded tips and strategies for buying Bitcoin without attracting unwanted attention. The stakes were high, for both the traders and the regulators attempting to maintain order in a rapidly evolving landscape. This underground economy was not just a haven for individuals like Sergey, but also a fertile ground for illicit activities. According to a 2023 report by Chainalysis, nearly $1.5 billion of Bitcoin transactions in Russia were linked to criminal enterprises. Cybercriminals capitalized on the opacity of cryptocurrency, using it to launder money and execute ransomware attacks, further complicating the Russian government's stance on Bitcoin. The Russian government's response was a patchwork of enforcement and leniency, reflecting the broader confusion over how to regulate this digital frontier. In some regions, authorities cracked down on illegal Bitcoin exchanges, conducting raids and seizing assets. Yet in other areas, enforcement was lax, with local officials turning a blind eye to the flourishing trade, perhaps acknowledging its role in softening the blow of sanctions. Behind these developments lay a complex interplay between Russia's financial institutions and its political apparatus. The central bank, led by Elvira Nabiullina, remained resolute in its opposition to Bitcoin, fearing its potential to destabilize the already fragile ruble. Meanwhile, the finance ministry, advocating for regulation and taxation, saw cryptocurrencies as a necessary evil in navigating the post-sanctions economy. This tension mirrored historical precedents from Russia's past, where differing visions of progress often clashed, leaving citizens caught in the crossfire. Just as during the early 1990s, when Russia transitioned from a centrally planned economy to a market-based system, the current state of flux created opportunities and perils in equal measure. Amidst this turmoil, a new generation of Russian entrepreneurs emerged, tech-savvy and adaptable, eager to harness the power of Bitcoin. In Siberia, where vast hydroelectric dams powered massive mining operations, young engineers worked tirelessly to optimize the mining process, ensuring Russia remained a key player in the global cryptocurrency market. Their efforts were a testament to the resilience and ingenuity that characterized the country's response to economic adversity. Yet, the allure of Bitcoin was not without its consequences. The underground market's growth exposed ordinary Russians to risks, from financial scams to the volatility of cryptocurrency prices. Stories began to surface of individuals who, lured by the promise of quick profits, found themselves ensnared in Ponzi schemes or facing catastrophic losses as Bitcoin's value fluctuated. In 2023, the story of Elena Petrova gained national attention. A retired schoolteacher from Kazan, she invested her life savings in a fraudulent Bitcoin investment platform, hoping to secure her financial future. When the platform collapsed, Elena lost everything, a victim of the burgeoning Bitcoin market's darker side. Her story underscored the human cost of the unregulated Bitcoin market, highlighting the need for a coherent regulatory framework. It was a call to action, not just for the Russian government, but also for the global community, as cryptocurrencies increasingly transcended national borders, creating challenges that demanded collective solutions. Despite these challenges, Bitcoin continued to carve out a niche within the Russian economy. By the end of 2023, it was estimated that around 5% of all Bitcoin transactions globally involved Russian actors, indicating the significant role the country played in the cryptocurrency landscape. This statistic was a testament to Russia's adaptability, yet it also raised questions about the sustainability of such a heavy reliance on digital currencies. The world watched closely, aware that Russia's journey with Bitcoin might serve as a precursor for other nations grappling with similar issues. In the corridors of power in Washington, Brussels, and Beijing, policymakers debated the implications of Russia's strategies, considering how economic sanctions might evolve in response to the rise of cryptocurrencies. As the global financial system appeared to be on the cusp of transformation, Russia's story offered a glimpse into a possible future. It was a future where traditional financial borders were increasingly blurred, where digital currencies challenged the hegemony of established monetary systems, and where the balance of power could shift in unpredictable ways. In this context, the personal stories of individuals like Sergey and Elena became even more poignant, reminding us of the human dimension underlying these grand economic narratives. Their experiences encapsulated the hopes and fears of millions, poised on the edge of a new era, uncertain of what the dawn might bring. As we draw this chapter to a close, one can't help but wonder about the next steps in this unfolding saga. Will Russia successfully integrate Bitcoin into its economy, or will the challenges prove insurmountable? How will the global community respond, and what lessons will be learned from this unprecedented experiment in economic adaptation? The answers, as always, lie in the future, and perhaps it is in the next chapter that we will uncover the truths that elude us now as we continue this journey through a landscape shaped by innovation and necessity. And perhaps it is in the next chapter that we will uncover the truths that elude us now as we continue this journey through a landscape shaped by innovation and necessity. Our path leads us to the examination of a future still unwritten, where the lines between opportunity and peril blur beneath the weight of historical precedent and present urgency. As we delve into the investigation of what lies ahead for Bitcoin in Russia, we must first understand the forces that have brought us to this moment. Russia's initial steps into the world of cryptocurrency were hesitant and marked by caution. In January 2014, the country's first official stance on Bitcoin was outlined by the Prosecutor General's office. They warned that the use of Bitcoin could be potentially illegal, emphasizing that the ruble remained the sole legal means of payment within Russia. This declaration reflected a long-standing wariness of digital currencies, seen as tools that could potentially destabilize the national economy. Throughout the years, this skepticism was consistently echoed by Elvira Nabiullina, the governor of the central bank. Nabiullina has been a steadfast opponent of Bitcoin, voicing concerns that cryptocurrencies could undermine the state's control over the financial system. Her apprehension was shared by the Federal Security Service, or FSB, who viewed Bitcoin as a potential instrument of Western influence. However, opposing voices also emerged from within the Russian government. The finance ministry, notably, took a more pragmatic stance. They advocated for regulation and taxation of cryptocurrencies, seeing potential benefits where others saw threats. This internal conflict created a long-standing policy stalemate, shaping the debate from 2014 through to 2021. The landscape began to change with the imposition of global sanctions. These external pressures forced Russia to reassess its economic strategies, pushing Bitcoin from the periphery into the mainstream. As international isolation intensified, the need for alternative financial tools became apparent. Suddenly, Bitcoin was no longer merely a subject of theoretical debate, it was a practical necessity. In the vast expanse of Siberia, this necessity manifested physically. Here, the harsh winters became an unlikely ally for Bitcoin mining operations. The natural cold provided a cost-effective solution for cooling the powerful computers necessary for mining, a key factor in making Bitcoin mining in Russia viable and efficient. Hydroelectric dams, too, played a crucial role, powering these operations with renewable energy. This confluence of geographical and technological factors transformed Siberia into a pivotal hub in the global cryptocurrency network. Yet, as Bitcoin's prominence grew, so did the challenges it presented. The legal landscape surrounding cryptocurrency in Russia remained a labyrinthine puzzle. Contradictory laws and enforcement actions created a climate of uncertainty, where the rules governing Bitcoin were often as opaque as the currency itself. In 2016, an attempt to bring clarity came with a draft law proposing to criminalize Bitcoin use, suggesting penalties of up to 4 years in prison. This severe approach underscored the ongoing struggle to fit Bitcoin into Russia's existing legal and economic frameworks. Despite these hurdles, the underground market for Bitcoin flourished. Ordinary citizens and criminals alike turned to this digital currency, driven by a combination of opportunity and necessity. The resilience of this market highlighted the demand for financial tools that operate beyond the reach of traditional controls. As we stand on the brink of the future, the question looms: what role will Bitcoin play in Russia's economic and social landscape? Will it be embraced as a legitimate financial tool, or will it remain a contested space, fraught with legal and ethical dilemmas? To answer these questions, we must look beyond the immediate and consider the broader implications for global cryptocurrency adoption. As Russia navigates its complex relationship with Bitcoin, the decisions made here could have far-reaching impacts, influencing how other nations approach this digital frontier. The future, as ever, remains unwritten. Yet the investigation into Russia's evolving stance on Bitcoin offers clues to what may come. It is a story of adaptation, resilience, and the intricate balance of power in an interconnected world. In this narrative, the human element is paramount. Behind every technological advancement and policy shift are individuals grappling with change, innovators seeking new opportunities, regulators striving to maintain order, and citizens negotiating the uncertainties of a digital age. Their stories remind us that the evolution of Bitcoin in Russia is not just a tale of economics or technology. It is a deeply human story, shaped by the hopes, fears, and ambitions of those who live it. As we conclude this chapter, we stand at a crossroads. The investigation into Bitcoin's future in Russia is ongoing, with each day bringing new developments and challenges. The narrative we have explored is but a glimpse into a larger unfolding story, one that will continue to evolve as long as the tensions between regulation and innovation persist. And so, as we prepare to turn the page, we are left with a sense of anticipation. What comes next is uncertain, but it is filled with potential. The story of Bitcoin in Russia is far from over, and as we continue our exploration, we remain committed to uncovering the truths that lie ahead. Join us for the next chapter, where we will delve deeper into the complexities and possibilities that define this remarkable journey. Join us for the next chapter, where we will delve deeper into the complexities and possibilities that define this remarkable journey. As we reflect on Russia's shifting stance toward Bitcoin, we encounter a landscape marked by profound transformation. The legacy of this evolution is not merely financial, but deeply intertwined with the fabric of Russian society and global geopolitics. The story begins in the cold corridors of 2014, when Bitcoin was first branded as a potential threat by Russian authorities. It was January of that year when the Prosecutor General's office declared that any involvement with Bitcoin could be considered illegal. This stance was a reflection of the broader skepticism within the Russian government towards any financial innovation that threatened to undermine the established order. This initial dismissal was underscored by a draft law in 2016 proposing penalties of up to 4 years in prison for Bitcoin use. Such measures reflected a Russia wary of relinquishing control over its currency, the ruble, which remains the sole legal means of payment in the country. This reluctance to embrace Bitcoin was not merely about economics. It was about sovereignty, a nation's enduring fear of losing grip over its financial apparatus. Elvira Nabiullina, the steadfast governor of the central bank, was a consistent voice against Bitcoin. Her opposition was rooted in concerns over economic stability and the perceived threat of foreign digital currencies. Nabiullina, educated at Moscow State University in the 1980s, had witnessed the tumultuous post-Soviet economic landscape firsthand. Her cautious stance was informed by a deep-seated belief in maintaining the pillars of financial stability. Yet, Alongside her stood the finance ministry, advocating for a more nuanced approach. They saw potential in regulating and taxing cryptocurrencies, envisioning a system that could harmonize modern financial technology with traditional economic principles. This internal governmental debate was emblematic of a broader tension within Russia, a struggle between progress and tradition, innovation and control. The debate between the central bank and the finance ministry created a policy stalemate that endured for years. It was a struggle emblematic of Russia's broader tension between embracing innovation and maintaining control. During this period, public discourse was rife with speculation and uncertainty. Citizens, particularly the youth with an eye toward technological advancement, found themselves caught between conflicting narratives. This internal conflict continued until global events forced a change. With the imposition of international sanctions, Russia found itself economically isolated. These sanctions, sparked by geopolitical tensions, pushed the nation to explore alternative economic avenues. For many in Russia, this period was reminiscent of the Cold War years, characterized by a similar sense of isolation. In this new reality, Bitcoin emerged not as a threat, but as a lifeline. It offered a means of bypassing the global financial wall erected by sanctions. The landscape shifted from seeing Bitcoin as an enemy to a potential ally, a tool to maneuver around the economic restrictions faced by the nation. Siberia, with its vast landscapes and natural cold, became a focal point for Bitcoin mining operations. The harsh winters of this region, once seen as inhospitable, were now an asset, naturally cooling the mining hardware. Cities like Irkutsk and Krasnoyarsk became known for their burgeoning mining facilities, attracting interest from global investors. This ingenious adaptation was powered by hydroelectric dams, a testament to Russia's ability to turn geographical challenges into economic opportunities. The cold solution was both practical and symbolic of Russia's resilience. In these remote areas, communities began to see an economic revival, with local workers gaining jobs and regional infrastructure receiving much-needed investment. However, as with any complex system, the adaptation brought challenges. The legal landscape surrounding Bitcoin remained a labyrinth of contradictions and uncertainties. Despite various attempts, a coherent regulatory framework proved elusive. Local authorities often found themselves at odds with federal policies, creating an environment where ambiguity reigned supreme. On one hand, there was a desire to capitalize on the economic benefits of Bitcoin. On the other, a fear of relinquishing too much control to a decentralized currency. This dichotomy reflected a broader ambivalence, a nation caught between the allure of financial modernization and the comfort of familiar control mechanisms. The FSB, Russia's powerful security agency, viewed Bitcoin with suspicion, concerned about its potential as a tool of Western influence. This perspective added another layer to the already complex regulatory puzzle. The FSB's historical role as a guardian of Russian sovereignty meant that anything foreign, especially financially, was met with apprehension. Amidst this uncertain environment, a robust underground market for Bitcoin began to thrive. It provided both ordinary citizens and criminals a means to navigate the turbulent economic waters. For many, Bitcoin was not just a financial tool, but a means of securing economic freedom in a constrained environment. This black market operated in the shadows, resilient to official warnings and threats. It was a world driven by necessity and opportunism, a reflection of both desperation and ingenuity. Stories emerged of individuals using Bitcoin to buy everyday goods, conduct business, and even engage in more clandestine activities. Yet the story of Bitcoin in Russia is not solely one of conflict and adaptation. It is also a narrative rich with potential for the future. As technology continues to evolve, so too do the possibilities for cryptocurrency. Each advancement presents a chance for new regulatory approaches and economic strategies. The legacy of Russia's journey with Bitcoin, is deeply entwined with its history, culture, and geopolitical standing. It is a testament to the country's ability to navigate complex challenges and seize opportunities. Looking to the future, we see a landscape rife with potential for growth and diversification. The lessons learned from this journey could inform broader global approaches to cryptocurrency. As we conclude this chapter, we are left contemplating the many facets of this remarkable story. Russia's evolving relationship with Bitcoin reflects a broader narrative of change and adaptation in a rapidly shifting world. The legacy of this transformation is still being written, each day bringing new developments and possibilities. In the next chapter, we will explore these emerging trends, delving into the future of Bitcoin in Russia and beyond. The story is far from over, and its implications are profound, reaching far beyond borders and into the heart of global financial systems. Join us as we continue to unravel the intricate tapestry of Russia's relationship with Bitcoin, exploring the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The future is unwritten, and the possibilities are endless. Together, we will journey forward into this unknown, embracing the complexities that define our time. There is an irony in the chill of Siberian winters, where a new warmth is born from the most unlikely of sources, the relentless hum of Bitcoin miners. This transformation from distrust to dependence tells a tale not just of Russia and its shifting strategies, but of the broader dance between nations and technology. Human nature is complex, often defined by a reluctance to change until necessity forces our hand. The Russian journey with Bitcoin is a reflection of this, showing how even the most staunchly resistant entities must sometimes embrace what they once feared. It reminds us that money and trust have always been intertwined, fluid constructs shaped by necessity and innovation. In Russia's case, global sanctions served as a catalyst, reshaping priorities and altering perspectives. The story speaks to the adaptability inherent in us all, highlighting our capacity to innovate when faced with adversity. Trust, once lost, may find new ways to manifest, not in physical banks or national currencies, but in decentralized blocks of cryptographic evidence. Bitcoin, in its silent, stateless form, becomes a testament to the unyielding march of technology. It is a reminder that while governments can impose borders and barriers, the digital realm offers a vast, uncharted territory where such rules do not strictly apply. Yet as Russia's path shows, this new frontier remains fraught with complexities, a legal labyrinth as daunting as any maze of old. It is a place where black markets flourish alongside official markets, and where the future is as unwritten as the code that underlies these new currencies. As we ponder this, let us reflect on the quiet persistence of progress. The machines keep running, unfazed by politics and impervious to climate. They serve as a metaphor for the persistence of change, a constant in the human story. In the gentle hum of these algorithms, there's a lullaby of sorts. It's a reminder of the tireless pursuit of balance between control and freedom, between the known and the unknown. And as you drift into sleep, let the thought of this digital frontier, ever expanding and endlessly intriguing, be a gentle companion. Rest easy, knowing that the world continues to evolve, even as we close our eyes. This has been Satoshi's Lullaby. Sleep well. The world spins quietly on.